In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at PrizePicks. No, I am not sponsored. I wish, but today we're going to be looking at some of the lines for each of these 25 quarterbacks that I will name in a moment and decide if they will be going over or under their set line for season total passing yards. But before we jump into this video, everybody go check out my partner StadiumRant. They are a multimedia sports network made up of passionate sports fans just like you and me, and they bring you the best sports content. Whether it be their podcasts and weekly shows on their YouTube or articles through their website, StadiumRant has you covered in all facets of the game. Go check them out after this video. I will have links in my description box below. Leave them a comment and tell them Carson sent you. Now, into the video. So as I mentioned earlier, there are only 25 quarterbacks provided by PrizePicks. With there being 32 teams in the league, this means some quarterbacks are not going to be included. Those who are not included are Matt Stafford, Kyler Murray, any 49er quarterback, Jimmy G, Ryan Tannehill, either of the trash cans on the Buccaneers, and neither of the Commanders quarterbacks. So, any of these teams, any fans of these teams, I'm sorry that you may feel left out of this video. So to start, we're going to follow the order that PrizePicks has them listed as, just kind of randomly to be honest, but jumping right in, we have Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers' line is set at 4,050.5 going into his first year with a new offense, but with a familiar coordinator. He has weapons at both receiver and in the backfield. You can argue which is better or worse than Green Bay, but I'm going to go with the under on this one, being in his first season in New York in a division that no longer has free wins, or at least one that has some competition defensively, and that may take a few stat sheet stuffing games away from him. Moving on to Patrick Mahomes, who has a whopping 4,800.5 yard line. Mahomes having his line set at this is insane, first off, but it is also understandable. He's passed for over 5,000 yards twice in his career and over 4,800 another time in 2021. He set a career high without Tyreek Hill, and that makes me uncomfortable even thinking about taking his under. He's too good for me to doubt, as if expecting someone to throw under 4,800 yards is a harsh doubt, but I digress. I will give him the over. Next, we have Josh Allen. The Madden 24 poster boy is entering the season with a line of 4,375.5. He has a plethora of weapons around him, including new rookie tight end Dalton Kincaid, who is an absolute beast. He was slightly under the mark last year when he threw for 4,283 yards, and assuming he has Stephon Diggs this year and there's no more problems with him, I can see Josh Allen hitting the over. Moving on, we have Joe Burrow at 4,500.5. Joe Burrow is a man of many cringy aliases, but is still a stud in his own right. The Bengals have basically the exact same offense, but maybe a slight downgrade at tight end. 4,500 is not a small feat, but if he passed it 2 years ago and barely missed it last year, you know what? I'll give it to him. Over. Next, we have Justin Herbert at 4,625.5. Herbert is going into the year with a new offensive coordinator. Moore had some success in Dallas with Dak. He's going to be running the offense and has seen Herbert throw for over 4,600 yards twice and miss it once by a few hundred yards. I would love to see him go over again, but I cannot trust any Chargers offensive player to stay healthy, or any Charger for that matter. Kellen Moore has to be an upgrade over Joe Lombardi, but I still don't feel like the over is very safe on this one. I'm going to take the under. Next, we have Trevor Lawrence at 4,175.5. Trevor Lawrence has weapons. Evan Ingram saved his career. Christian Kirk and Zay Jones proved themselves as well last year. And now you add Calvin Ridley. They also have one of the league's deepest backfields in my opinion. So I'm going to confidently take the over. Next, we have Jalen Hurts at 3,675.5. Jalen Hurts had a crazy season last year with 35 total touchdowns. 13 of them were on the ground. Even, I think with him progressing even more this coming season, I think his two-way talent might keep him under 3,600 yards. Not saying that he can't throw for it, but him being able to rely on his feet as well, I think it's going to lead him to barely hit the under. Next, we have Lamar Jackson at 36.25.5. Lamar Jackson has thrown over 3,000 yards only once in his career, which was his MVP season. He's never really had an outstanding wide receiver core, but this year he has an improved one, but expect a career year by an additional 500 yards because of Odell Beckham and a rookie quarterback is a lot to bank on, so I'm going to take another close under. Next, we have the number 1 overall pick from this year's draft, Bryce Young, at 3,500.5 yards. The Panthers made a lot of moves to surround Bryce Young with solid weapons to transition to the league fairly easy. I think he'll be nowhere near a bad quarterback, but I'm going to take the under as I'm not really completely sold on the Panthers offense quite yet. Rookie quarterbacks are really the hardest to dissect, and you'll see that moving forward, but right now I'm going to take the under. Then we have another rookie in CJ Stroud at 3,425.5 yards. CJ Stroud and the Texans, I feel, have a very under-the-radar offense with some solid talent built on Dalton Schultz, a returning/debuting John Mechie, and Robert Woods. I think he'll perform pretty solid, and I could see him hitting the over, but not by a lot. So I will be taking the over on this one. Now moving on to, I'm pretty sure, the last rookie, Anthony Richardson at 2,599.5 yards. Anthony Richardson is very polarizing amongst fans, and I don't really think I'm sold on him quite yet. Despite him being a freak athlete, 2,600 yards shouldn't be terribly difficult for him to hit, especially with the talent they have on that offense barring injuries. ESPN currently has Minshew listed as a starter so far, and I've seen conflicting articles saying that he's going to be starter week 1, but as of right now, I'm not convinced that he's starting or he's benched. I'm just going to be safe and take the under. Next up, we have Dak Prescott at 4,125.5 yards. Prescott got Brandon Cooks in the offseason, but lost a solid tight end in Dalton Schultz and his offensive coordinator. I don't really think the drop-off will be as drastic as people think with Dalton Schultz, and I'm not really sure if Schottenheimer will be too big of a difference, so I'm just still going to take the over here. Next, we have Deshaun Watson at 3,625.5 yards. Deshaun Watson lit up the stat sheets in Houston before he got an unsolicited craving for some rub and tugs. If he can do what he did in Houston, if he can return to form this year with a solid receiving group, I can see the over. Next up, we have another player who was lighting it up for some unforeseen circumstances. This time, it is Tua Tagovailoa at 3,999.5 yards. Tua, if a doctor hadn't tried to get him killed, could have rode his momentum into this year. But now, we're starting off fresh. If he is to stay healthy, I can see him surpassing the 4,000-yard mark because that offense is going to be way too dangerous for him not to. I just really hope he doesn't get hurt. Next up is Russell Wilson at 3,875.5 yards. Russell Wilson has one of the best offensive coaches in the league, which is a huge upgrade from Nathaniel Hackett. He has some good weapons around him as well. If Denver can have a turnaround season from last year, I could see him passing it, but I'm still going to go with the under here. Going into his second offensive coordinator in as many years, there might be some sort of adjustment, right? And there's some injury history with the receiving corps in Denver, so give me the under. Next, we have Derek Carr at 3,875.5 yards. Carr is very overhated in my opinion, and now he's my team's QB. So if you think bias is going to make me pick the over, then you are mistaken. I know the Saints better than any other team, and I know that their offensive coordinator so far has been so disappointing, and the injuries to our offense are so brutal. And until either of those change, I'm going to take the under. Next, we have Netflix quarterback star Kirk Cousins at 4,275.5 yards. Cousins has been a consistent 4,000-yard passer for 8 straight seasons, excluding 2019. He lost Dalvin Cook, who's a great receiving back, but has a shiny new rookie in Jordan Addison, and still one of the best receivers in the league in Justin Jefferson. Even with a slight regression, I could still see him hitting the over. Next, we have Geno Smith at 3,899.5 yards. I wrote Geno off last year, but honestly, I'm not sure if I can expect the same kind of performance despite him adding a couple weapons to the offense. He threw for 4,200 yards last season, so a drop-off of a few hundred yards wouldn't really surprise me. I'm not saying he's going to be bad. He just might not be as good. I'm going to take the under. Moving on, we have Jared Goff at 3,999.5 yards. Goff quietly had a top 10 season last year, and his offense could be just as good this year. He won't get a full season out of Jameson Williams once again because somebody got in trouble gambling. But regardless, I could still see him getting a 4,000 yard season. Moving to Justin Fields at a huge 2,930.5 yards. After that trade for DJ Moore, the Bears have a pretty decent looking receiving core, and I just don't see how Justin Fields wouldn't take a step forward as a passer here. Do I think he will hit the over and basically just hit the 3,000 yard mark? It's scary, but I'll give it to him. Next, we have Mac Jones at 3,399.5 yards. Mac Jones had a setback year after having a literal defensive coordinator as an offensive coordinator. He has Juju and Gesicki on the offense and possibly D-Hop. Bill O'Brien is definitely an upgrade, whether you think he's good at his job or not. He's just not Matt Patricia. I think Jones gets back on track this year and hits the over. Moving to Daniel Jones at 3,275.5 yards. Danny Dimes lived up to the title last year under the first year with Brian Daboll. He's getting a pretty significant upgrade in talent this year, so I'm pretty comfortable taking his over. Next, we have Kenny Pickett at 3,300.5 yards. I have no idea if I'm a believer in Kenny Pickett or not. I really didn't watch a lot of Steeler games last year, so I don't have too much knowledge on him really. They added to the picket fence in his offensive line and traded for Allen Robinson, so I'll take his over. Next, we have Jordan Love, the man who just butchered a Father's Day insult against the Bears at 3,325.5 yards. Green Bay is entering their first season without Favre or Rodgers in years. Love having his first full season as a starter with the only offensive addition being Luke Musgrave. I think it's going to be a bit of a difficult season for him, so I'm going to take the under. And to close it out, we have Desmond Ridder at 2,575.5 yards. Ridder's spot is not the safest when you have the legendary Taylor Heineke as his backup, but in an offense with Pitts, London, and Bijan Robinson, I feel like there is no reason for him to go under this line, so I'm going to take the over. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know your over and unders for each of these players if you want to type out that big ass comment in my comment section. If you like the concept of this video, I will be having more with the running back and the wide receiver additions, both pulling from PrizePicks as well. So stay tuned for that. Leave a like, leave a comment, sub, share it with your friends. Don't forget to check out StadiumRant, and I will see you in the next video, boys.